The great thing about Scratch is that it's really easy for beginners to get started. The problem is that the same features that make it so easy for beginners can become really cumbersome and difficult for people who are experts. One of the features like this is that Scratch prevents sprites from going completely off the screen. Now this is really useful if a new programmer says, when green flag clicked, forever move 10 steps as their first Scratch program. And they start going, and then if the Scratch cat didn't stop, they'd be in trouble because the programmer would go, where is the cat now? It's gone and I can't get it back. And unless they understood coordinates and be able to type in 0, 0, they might not be able to get their sprite back. So Scratch prevents this problem by stopping sprites at the edge of the screen like this. And so this is a really great feature. It's important that Scratch has these types of features because it really helps the target audience. But if you're someone who knows what you're doing and you want to make projects that are a little more sophisticated, sometimes it's important to be able to allow sprites to go off screen. So there are a couple different solutions to this that I want to discuss. The first one is pretty simple, and it's not completely elegant, but it's very easy. And it's something that I honestly recommend for if you want to just have a quick solution to this. So what you can do is create a sprite that covers up the border of the screen. And it's important to note that sprites which are any sort of usual size will be chopped off so that 15 pixels always are shown at the edge of the screen. So like this sprite has a width of 93, right? And 15 of those 93 pixels will always be on screen in each direction, horizontally and vertically. So if you can just use a sprite like this one, which is basically transparent in the middle and then 15 pixels of black border on each edge, you can actually use it to just cover up any sprites that might be going off screen. So we could say when green flag clicked, go to 0, 0, and then show, and we probably want it to go to the front so that it appears in front of all our other sprites. And once we do this, now, I guess I can change my script a little here, the cat is able to go all the way off the screen, essentially. Now, it's not really going all the way off screen. If we hide this guy, you can see this cat is still there. But just doing this, you can sort of make your game still be immersive if everything occurs within the black border and you have a lot going on. It still feels relatively immersive, but you can quickly solve the problem of sprites going off screen. But this isn't really a very satisfying solution because the sprite isn't actually going off screen, and it would be great if we could allow the sprite to truly go off screen without needing a border like this one. So there is actually a solution to this, and I kind of want to dig into the details a little bit before we get there. So this is another project with sort of a border showing where the 15 pixel gap is on each side. And just to show that it really is on each side 15 pixels, I've got this sprite in the middle that's going to expand out with lots of clones. And you can see as it goes out, when it hits the edges, they all get clipped at exactly 15 pixels. So what we want to do is find a way to fix that. And I've got a little animation here to show kind of what we're going to do to solve the problem. Now, when I click the green flag, you can see I've kind of simulated here a Scratch window within the Scratch window so that we can sort of see what's going on off screen in the blue region out here when you couldn't see it on this version. So right here, my sprite is trying to go to the right. The move 4 steps is running forever, but it can't go farther because it's hit that 15 pixel window. Now, the key to the solution is that Scratch only checks to make sure the sprite is on screen when you change its position. So if you change the X coordinate or you change the Y coordinate, that can be done using the go to blocks, the glide block, the move block, the change X, change Y, set X, set Y. All those blocks will change the coordinates of the sprite. And when you use any of them, Scratch will then check, is the sprite on screen? And if not, it'll sort of push it back. Fortunately, there are other blocks that allow us to move the sprite off screen that don't actually involve changing the sprite's coordinates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the sprite's size to be 200%, to be a lot larger. And you can see when I do that, the sprite is able to move a little farther to the right. I'll do that again. If we go back to 100%, we start the project, it gets to the edge, and then we set it to 200%. Now it's able to move a little bit farther. And this is great because now if we set the size back to 100%, remember when we set the size, Scratch is not going to check to see if the sprite is off screen because none of the coordinates are changing. The X and Y up here will stay the same. But when I set the size, now the sprite is off screen. So in using the size block, we can sort of trick Scratch into doing the calculation only when the sprite is big, but actually displaying the sprite as being small. So how would we use this in a real project? I'm going to make a new one here. And if I want my Scratch Cat to go off screen in a nice smooth way, I suppose actually we can just use the project from before here. I'm going to delete my border. And I want this sprite to go off screen. All I have to do is set the size of the cat to be 200% before it moves. And actually, we can go even bigger just for fun. Then if your sprite is a slightly different size, it can still work. And then after we move, we'll set our size back to be 100%, back to what we actually want it to be. And what this is going to do is all of these blocks are going to execute really, really quickly. And in fact, they're going to go so fast that the person using the project will not be able to see the sprite changing size at all. But when the movement happens, the sprite will actually be bigger in sort of the internals of Scratch. Scratch will be thinking the sprite is large, it's 400% size, and so it'll be able to go off screen. It'll be able to move farther to the right than it normally would, and then we'll set the size back, which means it can stay in the same position, but it looks like a normal size. So if we run this again, you can see now the Scratch Cat moves smoothly off the screen, just like we want. And this actually works in all directions. So if I maybe point up first, you can see that works as well. And, I don't necessarily have to go through all these here, but you can see that it does really work. So the trick is that anytime that you want to move the sprite, if you want to set its X coordinate, change its X coordinate, set its Y, change its Y, use a move 10 steps, whatever you're doing to change the X and Y coordinates of the sprite, before and after you do that, you're going to have to set the sprite's size to be larger than normal. And if you do that and then set it back immediately after, you'll be able to move the sprite off screen in a nice, smooth way.